Welcome, whiskey people, to another Whiskey Talkin podcast. I just want to say, first off, thank you for all your support so far, for going to the Facebook and Instagram and, sharing and rating and doing all the social media stuff that you don't have to, but certainly appreciate it. This episode was a lot of fun to do. I was joined by Nathan Greene, Mixology Ambassador for the Moët Hennessey portfolio. We discuss all things Glenmorangie and Ardbeg Scotch, two very different styles, and then get to know Nate a little bit. He's a great guy, a lot of information, and, the goal of the show is we get to know whiskey and, more importantly, whiskey people. All right, guys and gals, let's get into it.
The Whiskey Talkin' Podcast.
All right, welcome everybody to the Whiskey Talkin' Podcast. We have a fun one today. We have Nate Greene in the house. Spitting?
Absolutely.
All right. Nate, let the people know what your official title is.
All right, so glad to be here. First off, my official title is Portfolio Mixology Ambassador for Moët Hennessey, working out of Strategic Group.
It's pretty nice portfolio.
It's kind of sexy.
Yeah, they have some all right stuff.
It's all right.
It was either that song or this one. I don't know what you prefer.
Anything Wu Tang. So, it's funny because I was going to give you shit and be like, if you didn't play any walk-in music, I'd be like, where the fuck's my walk-in music?
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So, yeah, man, welcome. This is going to be a fun one. We're going to go through the Glenmorangie line. You brought some really special stuff that definitely, hopefully the listeners haven't tried before. Even if you've tried the staples that you see quite frequently, and then we'll move into Ardbeg. So, really fun juxtaposition of styles of Scotch.
Absolutely.
So
total dichotomy.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. So tell the people kind of where you grew up, what led you to Vegas, and kind of what led you to this humble little podcast here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most kind of know my story at this point, at least from the trade in Vegas. And I moved out here from the Bay Area about 11 years ago, 2006, and was an accountant with the University Housing System at San Jose State, and was playing poker on the side, and then started making good money playing poker, and ended up moving out here to play poker for about 5 years.
Nice.
And then found this industry after a bunch of random stuff that happened about 7-8 years ago, and started as a bartender and kind of worked my way up through, beverage management and AGM and director of beverage, and then found this gig. So
it's not bad, man. It's not a bad progression. What was so you picked poker, so the one of the easiest, most stable professions you could have probably
absolutely.
How was that?
No stress too.
Right. How did those skills translate into what you do now? It has to,
It does, because I think when you're an ambassador, everyone sees what you project when you're out, visiting accounts and getting people to try your juice that you represent and all that kind of stuff, and they see the events that you do and they think, hey, I could easily do that. Well, that's the glamorous side of the job. What they don't see is that there's a lot of stuff on the back end, admin work.
Sure.
If you don't know Excel, PowerPoint, if you don't know how to write a professional email, if you didn't even know how to write your resume properly.
Budgets
absolutely. Budget projections, what are your KPIs that you're hitting? All this kind of stuff. I've got very intense goals that I have to hit, and my ambassador position is different than other ambassador positions. So I think in that respect, from a number standpoint, and having been in operations too, from behind the bar and running bars, I can talk to people more from, cost benefit analysis perspective. It's not more like, hey, do you like this shit?
Yeah.
Buy it, bring it in for me. It's more like, hey, this would make sense from a fiscal standpoint as well. So I think that kind of gives me a little bit of an advantage just with the numbers.
For sure. It seems like, from the outside looking in, brand ambassadors, all you see is the parties and, buying drinks and doing cocktails and the Instagram. Obviously, there's so much more to that. it's kind of one of those roles where you dig into it a little deeper and you need this perfect storm. And I think, that's why a lot of companies are trying to pull bartenders from beyond the bar and bar managers, because that's one element, right? So you can talk to bar staff, bar management,
Absolutely.
but then you need that admin side. It's the bulk of the work, right?
It is 60% easy.
Yeah. So it's funny how little people realize that just following up on an email, like follow up,
Exactly. Sure.
So that's awesome, man. So led you to this awesome portfolio. You won Brand Ambassador of the Month from Nightclub and Bar. Did they run out of brand ambassadors?
Well, it was the first one that they offered, and I think I was the only one nominated because I nominated myself. I'm sure it was the case, so they had me do it. So.
Yeah. No, congrats on that,
motherfucker.
Before we get into the awesome whiskeys, real quick, top 5 favorite rappers, alive or dead.
Wow.
Just to get the brain going.
Okay, so let me tell you, not in any particular order.
No.
Okay, so probably be Jizza.
Wow, right off the bat.
Yeah, he'd be up there.
I'll let you do it over this.
Who else? Jada Kiss would be up there.
Okay.
P from PMD, EPMD.
Wow.
I dig his flow. I've always loved it. Big Daddy Kane would be up there.
Rakim?
And Rakim.
Okay.
I went old school on you.
I got you. No, you got to mix it up. I like that you didn't pick all the obvious choices.
Like Young Jeezy and
Lil
Migos
Wayne.
and
Yeah. And
Future.
Yeah. Did you ever see this is totally off topic, but the Snoop Dogg talking about all the young rappers all sound the same?
Yes, bro.
Amazing. Like, he could put out a song like that easy.
Absolutely.
So anyway,
I love it.
cool, man. Let's get into it. I have a little clip here of Glenmorangie, and then I'll let you tell your perspective and about the range, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Cool, man. So we'll start off with Glenmorangie Original. This is the base juice that we put out, and we're less about age statements. I think in general, Scotch is moving away from age statements overall. It's hard to keep up with demand these days.
Right.
So it's more about, with us, it's interesting. Glenmorangie is the 4th largest single malt producer in the world.
Is it still the top selling single malt Scotch in Scotland, correct?
In Scotland, in all of the UK,
Since like the 80s.
Yeah. Like literally 3 decades running, it's number 1 there.
It's amazing.
But with us being 4th and the big 3 being where they're at, it's such a big difference in production. Like,
sure.
Those guys are huge. And with us, it's funny because we know what everybody else does and how they produce and what type of cast they select and whatnot.
Right.
And we spend so much money year in and year out. Dr. Bill does. Brendan McCarran does. Like they spend so much money on cast selection that that's the second part of the equation when you're making a good final whiskey.
Absolutely.
Not only the juice has to be good, but you have to be pulling really good stuff too to be actually maturing the stock. So
can you speak on the designer cask idea just real quick? Just because to me, doing research, that was like...
Yeah, absolutely. So Dr. Bill a long time ago basically said that in order to source the best casks, we should actually be involved from the very beginning and actually growing the trees. So we actually own our own forest. Glenmorangie does and Ardbeg does in the Ozark Mountains, mainly in Missouri.
Yeah.
They only select really old trees for their staves. They're all north facing. And what's interesting about that is they're looking for wood that's actually much more porous than what you normally get when making American oak casks. So,
does that come from the slow grown aspect?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, and we, at least in the Scotch industry, majority of houses tend to kiln dry their staves just to save time.
Yep.
And because it's obviously more
Sure.
cost effective. Glenmorangie doesn't really spare any expense, rather. So they actually air season everything minimum 2 years.
Wow.
And leave it out there. And the difference between the two, if people aren't aware, is when you kiln dry something, the staves right off the bat, all those tannins and undesirable sort of flavors that are inherently in the wood get sort of baked into it.
Sure.
And coated and protected basically from the fire. So when you actually throw the whiskey in there after you build the cask, like that's still trapped in there.
Yeah.
So you're still leaching out those undesirables
Right.
if you kiln dry, you know? And so you got to have exceptional juice in order to sort of overcome that, because that's what 70% of the ultimate sort of flavor in
At
the end
least,
is
yeah.
what you're extracting from the wood, at least. So, so yeah, when you air dry, when you air season stuff, the elements are essentially whisking all that stuff away over that period of time. So, that's what we do. And we send our stuff to two bourbon producers in particular, and we get their stuff back after about 4 years. And we only use the cask for first fill, ex-bourbon, and second fill, and then we're done.
Right.
Whereas most of the Scotch industry tends to be anywhere from 2 to 10 times. But
And then they'll blend based on the portfolio or the profile of
yep,
what that barrel's giving to the whiskey.
absolutely.
Can you say what distilleries you work with? And you don't do that. I know there's.
Well, I could. I mean, I'll say one. We do work with Heaven Hill.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there
for
might
sure.
be another big name in there too.
There
right?
could be another big name in
But,
there, but that you wouldn't expect actually,
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe my research was wrong then.
or at least your audience wouldn't expect.
Is it necessarily bourbon?
Not necessarily.
I gotcha. I think everyone maybe will get that.
There you go.
So I mean, just on the base level, you know, Highland style, Tane, Scotland. Yeah,
Yep.
did I say that right?
Yep.
It's
Not
pretty
Tane.
Tane. Yeah, it's the T is the second T is silent,
Yeah, exactly.
as they say in Scotland. Legend says that alcoholic beverages were produced here in the Middle Ages. That's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
the Morangi, right? Mm-hmm. Morangi Farm, first alcohol production was in 1703. So
Yep.
not bad.
Yeah, and Glenmorangie has been around since 1843 too. So what a lot of people don't know, we'll get into it when we get into Ardbeg after this too, is when Christianity, everything came through Islay first before it hit the mainland of the UK. So distillation actually hit Islay first before it came and spread throughout what we know now as Highlands and Speyside and whatnot, and heading
makes
south.
sense.
So
Cool.
yeah.
Briefly, can you talk, just because we're talking history, can you talk about the 16 Men of Tane?
Yeah, absolutely.
'Cause
So
that goes to what a small group produced this. I mean, now it's 24 now, but
yeah.
talk a little bit on that.
So 16 Men of Tane, it's synonymous with the Glenmorangie brand. These are the original gentlemen that were involved in the production of making the whiskey back at its inception. And we carried on that tradition for decades, really, until we had to slowly start expanding production over the last, I'd say, 40, 50 years or so. And 16 Men of Tane, if you walk through the halls, if you ever get the opportunity to go to Glenmorangie and walk through the visitor center and do a tour of the distillery and stuff, you'll see pictures like of all those guys lying throughout the walls, and just walking through there and seeing and feeling the history of those guys, and just knowing that all the calluses on their hands were real. It's not staged. It's like these guys were involved in every single stage of production and stuff, and
they were malting their own back
malting
then too.
everything. Yeah, absolutely. So it's quite amazing. Glenmorangie is obviously a lighter style, so we're not known for our ppms, phenolic content whatsoever. But
You have another distillery for that.
yeah, exactly. But even then, we were malting our own stuff and whatnot. So it's really cool to see the history and see something evolve the way it has, and especially where Dr. Bill has taken both brands over the last 30 plus years, and where Brennan's going to take it too after he takes over for him whenever that is.
Whenever, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, he'll even say it. There's an interview I just posted of him today on social media. And he's like, I don't want Dr. Bill to leave at all.
Yeah, no, who would? You know what I mean?
The guy's a friggin' ridiculous genius. So
Yeah, absolutely, man. So yeah, we can get into the first one, and you can talk a little bit about it.
sure.
right as you take a drink of water. That was my bad. I
all
did that
good.
on purpose.
No, absolutely.
It's like
It's
at a restaurant, you wait until someone takes a bite.
Well, I was just about to say I was going to eat this bite of lasagna too, and motherfucker,
How's the lasagna?
it's fantastic.
Good.
Thank you, thank you, Keely.
She might not. She's probably not even going to listen. No one listens to this. I'm just kidding.
At least I'm getting paid well.
There's chocolates and almonds here.
Exactly.
So.
And your nuts are right here. This is great. So we're going to start off with Glenmorangie Original. This is the main juice that goes into all of our line. Our extra matured stuff, our 18-year. This is the base whiskey that Glenmorangie is known for. It's consistently 94 points year in and year out, like 14, 15 straight years now by Jim Murray.
Just a staple. Yeah.
It really is. And that's a testament because there are other, for lack of a better phrase, entry-level single malt scotches out there from the Highlands and from Speyside that we're compared to as a brand that sort of vary in their scores from year to year.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that you can attribute that to is because their whiskey is great. They're making that the same year in and year out.
Sure.
It just comes down to probably cask selection
Right.
in the end with their maturation process. So for us to be that consistent year in and year out is great. And what's amazing about this for a single malt scotch, I think it's an amazing entry to the category.
Absolutely. But
Because you smell it and it's like honey, vanilla. I get white flower, maybe a little bit of creme brulee, definitely vanilla.
sure, a lot of vanilla, but they have it has this balance of citrus as well, which
Absolutely.
I really like because it's a lot of times, whether it be bourbons or scotches, a lot of times sometimes you can get hit with this vanilla creme brulee, like
Yeah.
depending on the cask, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, for me, it's obviously a lighter style, but just balanced very well with the bouquet matching the palate.
Yeah.
Finish for a lighter scotch is really, really good. So
That's
I dig
good.
it. So ex-bourbon cask, yeah, first and second
First
fill
and
on
second
this.
fill only, ex-bourbon. You're looking at 10 years. It used to be Glenmorangie 10, but now it's Glenmorangie Original, and just because we're moving away from age statements
Okay.
for the most part.
Yeah. Can you speak with this whole line has this elegant, lighter style, obviously that is known for. Can you speak of having the tallest stills and what that entails and gets us to this point?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because that's kind of what Glenmorangie is known for. They model their stills after old gin stills. That's what was first purchased back in the 1800s, mid 1800s, and that's what they were distilling from. So what they've done is try and recreate that. We now have 8 in-house, and the stills themselves are 26 feet tall, but the necks are over 16 feet tall. And the reason for that is when you think about traditional alembic or Chianti copper pot stills, they're usually squat, short, and whatnot. And if you guys know anything about distillation, you'll know that if there's less distance for the vapors to travel, then it's still holding on to a lot of those congeners, the heavier elements of that distillate as it's being boiled and sent up the arm. The taller the still means the lighter the vapors. So it's less encumbered by all those things, and then you're getting more copper contact as that vapor is going up, which adds all those estery sort of floral aspects to it.
Sure.
And gives you that honey and whatnot. When you get the vanilla, that's coming from the cask. And if you guys know anything about wood, it's with American oak, you're getting a lot of coconut, dill, and vanilla out of it. If you're finishing or aging in French oak for the most part, especially Limousin, and even to a certain extent Trancé, you're getting more baking spice, more pepperiness from it. So just because of the tighter grain, American oak's a more porous grain than French oak. So that's how we get our style. That's how we get this flavor for this whiskey for Glenmorangie Original, through those tall stills and through the cask that we select. So
Awesome, man. Yeah, it definitely sets us up for the rest of the expressions.
For sure.
So if we want to get on to the next one, I'm going to do a little bit of intro here. This is Dr. Bill kind of giving the rundown.
Glenmorangie is one of the oldest distilleries in Scotland. The brand itself is well known for two quite distinctive things. Firstly, all of our production goes into single malt bottling, and Glenmorangie is known for having this incredible complexity and soft creaminess of flavour. My role in the Glenmorangie company now is basically all of the liquid that goes into the bottle, whether it be our Glenmorangie bottlings or our Ardbeg bottlings, I'm responsible for that. I think I'm quite qualified for this job because, like everyone else out there, I am first and foremost a Scotch whisky consumer. We love this strapline unnecessarily.
I love it.
Well.
And it just makes, when you listen to that, it just makes the whiskey taste better.
Yeah.
When you hear that accent.
Oh,
you're
absolutely.
Like, so, cool. So let's get on to the Lasanta.
Yeah. One quick little fact about Dr. Bill is that he's got probably the dirtiest sense of humor out there, and he has tremendous jokes. The guy's hilarious as hell, and he can drink like a fish.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All the qualifications for a master distiller.
Absolutely. As a chemist.
And a doctor.
That's great.
Awesome. I love it.
All right, so we're going to get into what we call Glenmorangie Lasanta. This is part of one of three in our core line that we call the EMR range, the extra matured range. These are all 12-year-old whiskeys. You're taking essentially the Glenmorangie original 10-year whiskey that we just tasted, and we're finishing them in three different types of casks. The first one that we're going to taste is Lasanta, which is Gaelic for passion and warmth. This is finished in ex-sherry casks for 2 years. So it's a blend of Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez. So
can you explain to some of the people that are listening that don't really know what different sherry casks will lend to a whiskey?
Yes, absolutely. So assuming that you guys know what sherry is to begin with, when I say ex Oloroso cask, you're talking about a fortified wine that's been more oxidated. So there's a lot more flavor and nuance and mouthfeel to it when you put a whiskey in a cask that had been holding previously Oloroso sherry. You're going to get still a sweet but yet dry finish out of it. You're going to get sort of like maybe milk chocolate covered raisins, maybe some sultana, some like orange jam marmalade kind of action going on out of it. With Pedro Jimenez, because it's a sweeter fortified wine, you're getting all that stuff from the mold that was on those grapes as their late harvest. So that lends to the flavor of the wine itself, as well as what it's extracting when it hits the cask. And then when we put the whiskey in that Pedro Jimenez cask, you're getting heavy raisin. Yeah. Definitely a little bit of dark chocolate and stuff like that. We do mostly Oloroso in this and a little bit less Pedro Jimenez because something that sweet could overwhelm everything. So,
and being a lighter style, you don't want to overpower. So, I mean, it's definitely a perfect example of balance where it show restraint. You know, especially in a category, whether it be American whiskey or Scotch, where it's the more is better, more peat's better, more oak is better, more age is better. It's like no, hold on. Let's and that's where you could talk about. I got to do another show on cognac for whiskey drinkers. I can't wait to get into that because then you can get into the art of the blend and really that's where the art and the magic really happens, is blending and knowing those nuances. So
for sure,
that's what I dig about this brand. It doesn't need to be smacking you in your face to enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's just not the style. They want the style to be about the whiskey itself. And if you age whiskey, regardless of how, what you're doing with it, regardless of your malting process and whatnot, if you're aging all in ex-sherry barrels and stuff like that, or ex just bourbon, and you're leaving it in there for years at a time and saying it's old and that's going to be great.
Right.
That's kind of a common fallacy these days because it's like, ex-bourbon, whiskey left in there for 25 plus years, it could just end up being an oak bomb with just vanilla.
Yeah.
And nothing else. And then it becomes one-dimensional. You do all ex-sherry, then the sherry overwhelms the whiskey, and then you don't even taste the whiskey anymore.
Right.
So I like the balance on these.
Cool. Listen to a little bit more of Dr. Bill talk about this while we taste it, and then we'll give our tasting notes.
The word Lasanta is a Scottish Gaelic word. It means warmth or passion, and it gives you a clue as to the rich, warm, spicy flavours we're going to find in this whisky. My inspiration for Lasanta came from my knowledge of Asian consumers' taste and palates, where they like something a little bit spicy, a little bit rich, a little bit sweet. So to make this whisky, the spirit is matured for 10 years in American white oak, and it's then transferred into Spanish oak Oloroso sherry cask for the final 2 years. And this imparts a bit of depth, a bit of richness, a bit of spiciness to it.
So yeah, it's almost what you just covered, but with that accent,
It just sounds so much better.
I don't know, just different. Same, but different. But yeah, this is one of my favorites of the extra age. Is what's it called? Extra matured.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how 2 years can add an incredible amount of depth of flavor, like you was saying. But yeah, for me, it's like you kind of said, that chocolate covered raisin, like mintiness too. Now a little bit.
Yeah, there's probably that sort of
More on the
menthol
finish.
aspect on the mid
Which
part of your palate. Yeah.
which I actually really like. But definitely a fuller flavor too. So
Yeah.
I dig it, man. And you're a sherry guy. Everyone that knows you knows that. Where did your, just briefly talking about it, where did your love of sherry come from? And then, where did you start like really getting involved quickly? Of involving sherry in cocktails and tiki, because you were kind of known for that for a little bit.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think it probably happened around late 2010, early 2011. After I first got started, I started reading up on just trying to be good enough to, because at that point I was running Vanguard Lounge, so I had to be on point after Dustin Drankevich left. I was working under him, and I had to know what we were doing, and I wanted to make sure that I was putting out good product. And I read articles on what San Francisco and New York were doing,
Right.
what was supposed to be big in 2011 and stuff like that. No sherry. And I looked around at the bars that we had in town, and nobody was using that. Nobody was doing beer cocktails. Nobody was doing smoke cocktails and stuff like that. And I wanted to kind of be the first to attack that if possible, because I had that power to. I didn't
Sure.
work at a huge corporation on the Strip where I didn't have any creative freedom. So I could get away with messing around at a downtown little bar when there was nothing on Fremont East Street, not even Park and all those places. And
that was pre like expansion and renovation.
yeah, I mean the arcade place was
Insert coins
came and gone, and all that kind of stuff, and there was nothing like that there, so we could get away with doing whatever. And I think I went and reached out to all my distributors and was like, hey, send me what you got in terms of sherry. And I fell in love with it just because of the ABV, the taste, the fact that I could pair it with food.
How versatile, man.
Yeah, it's so versatile.
Yeah.
And those things, and trying to be the first to actually, tackle it as a legitimate sort of modifier in Vegas was the appeal for me. And just kind of ran with it. I love sherry. I still drink it to this day.
It's awesome. So obviously, an accomplished mixologist in your own right. 2013, you won the Drambuie competition at Tales of the Cocktail. Does it bother you that this is your biggest achievement to date, or
this guy looks at me while he says that with his fucking shit-eating grin, like, take the bait, you prick. I love it. Yeah, I mean,
it's
some might say it is.
It's my bitterness that I've never won a national competition.
That's okay. I won enough for everybody in town.
There you go.
Oh, see, I was waiting for that opportunity.
Literally, if you drop that mic, it's cheap. It will break. So please don't drop the mic.
I'm just messing.
Yeah. So nice segue back to the whiskey, but just a great expression. What are your thoughts on how you should drink it? I know that this is a touchy subject, but particularly with a whiskey like this, it depends. How I drink my whiskey can depend on anything, my mood, the weather. Particularly for me, it's the style of whiskey, ABV, things like that. So what are your what's your advice for people listening on how do I drink whiskey perfectly? Because that's a thing, and it's very personal.
Right. So. Everything that you just said right now in the last 10 seconds is what I would tell everyone.
Yeah.
Drink based on your mood, not what anyone tells you how to drink it. Take into account like the temperature outside. You know, if you want to drink it with a splash of soda, drink it with a splash of soda. If you want to drink it on a rock, drink it on the rock. If you want equal, 2 parts whiskey and 1 part water, then go for it. If you want a splash of water, go for it. It's whatever your palate can sort of bear to take. I always suggest people taste the whiskey as it was made.
Sure.
And try it neat. Challenge yourself, challenge your palate. And from there, obviously, like you said, based on ABV, tone it down after that. I'm with you. Like there's so many variables that there's no one right way to drink whiskey. It doesn't matter if it's American, Japanese, Taiwanese, or Scotch or whatever.
But the Scotch are a particular people that are pretty passionate about how they drink their spirit.
Right.
Out of almost all the spirit categories, everyone else is like, if you like it, you like it, but I've heard some pretty impassioned testimonies from some of the master distillers, and they're like, no, you're drinking it wrong.
Yeah.
Which is fun, because that goes along with like how fun and how much history is in the spirit category.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a romance to Scotch whiskey,
absolutely,
for sure.
100%. Cool. So what else are you getting this one that you can kind of lend your senses to the listeners? For me, this has more like walnut, a lot more nuttiness, obviously coming from the sherry cask.
For sure, absolutely. Totally agree. There is some of that spice, and there is that lingering finish. Like you said, you get mint. It's more of a sort of cooling menthol, which is interesting because not a lot of people get that. They get it a little bit more from the next one that we're going to taste, actually. So I think when it comes to Lasanta, just think whiskey and sherry, and then you can sort of formulate a plan ahead of time what your palate's going to taste even before that whiskey touches it.
Absolutely. We'll move on to the next one, kind of going through them, but we'll hear Dr. Bill, and then you can add to it.
Glenmorangie Quinta Ruban is a very particular whisky indeed. It was the first malt whisky to actually be extra matured in ruby port wine casks. So to make this, the spirit is matured for 10 years in the traditional American white oak casks, and then it's extra matured for a further 2 years in ruby port pipes from Oporto in Portugal. You can actually see the pinkish colour of the port wine in the inside of the wood there.
All right, I could listen to him all day.
It's like when he hit all those P's, I'm like, it's impossible. Ruby port pipes. I'm like, damn. All right, go ahead. Let's talk it up.
Yeah, so Quinta Ruban, I mean, just holding it up to the light, you compare it to the other whiskeys that we're about to taste, you see that pink sort of rosé color almost, and that is from the ruby red port pipes, and ruby port's the younger version, so it's younger wine, so we're getting a lot more fruitiness out of this, definitely red fruit. Like for me, this is like
this is definitely the
strawberry
darkest, but as far as like your line, this is probably the darkest, most intense as far as age. I mean,
from the extra mature line.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I would agree with that for sure. That's a great assessment.
The color is just really, really unique.
Yeah.
I'll have to put it up on the Instagram, but it's almost like I don't know, man. It's like, the best.
It's like rose gold.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of, for me, that chocolate's still there. That mint, like chocolate, like
chocolate and mint, man.
Like an Andes, almost
peppermint patty.
Yeah,
and I hate those after dinner mints.
Yeah,
but this for me personally, out of the extra matured range, you love the Lasanta and I love sherry, everything, but actually for whatever reason, the Quinta Ruban's my favorite.
So good,
and you still get the fruit too. Like you can tell that there's definitely some port influence in there.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about this line too, in particular, is that you're not losing that base. You can tell where it's like building a house with this. You have a foundation, and then you just build a different house on top of it, or an addition to the house, right? And you can't lose that solid foundation. So, for me, that's what's kind of so fun about this line too. But yeah, this is definitely up there. I mean, it's hard to pick, but yeah, this one's more after dinner for me.
Yeah.
But it's delicious, man.
Right on.
Can you talk a little bit about how important the water source is and what the water source is?
Yeah. So we have our own water source that's located less than a mile away from the distillery. It's a naturally occurring spring, and the spring sort of bubbles up throughout that area surrounding the distillery. We just happen to source it from one particular area where you can actually visit. It's across the highway from the distillery. And it's very rich in minerality. It is definitely not soft water. So what does that mean? When you're adding water to the process, it just adds more character, more nuance to the spirit in the end. And that water source is not shared by anybody else. It is proprietary to Glenmorangie. And we think that it most definitely has an effect. There's more magnesium in there, more phosphorus in there in that naturally occurring spring, and that sort of chemical reaction with the whiskey itself, and then factor in maturation and stuff, and then obviously all the copper contact when the tall stills and whatnot, all that combined sort of lends itself to what Glenmorangie is as an end product. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. It's such an important aspect of the whiskey, and they talk about it in different categories, but it's very important in Scotch, and the history and how the final product comes out. So thanks for clearing that up.
Sure.
You want to go into next one?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. We'll listen to a little bit just because it's awesome.
Now, as a regular visitor to Paris, I always loved the smell in a nice French patisserie, and that was kind of my inspiration for this product. So to make Nectar d'Or, the spirit is again matured for 10 long years in American white oak barrels, but it is then transferred to French oak Sauterne barriques for the final 2 years of extra maturation. It's called Nectar d'Or. Nectar describes the sweet flavour. The word or is another Scottish Gaelic word, and it means gold or golden. It's what I would describe as a slightly closed whiskey. It's slightly shy, and it needs to take a bit of time in the glass to relax and open up. So to encourage that, I'm going to add just
All right. Just a little bit. Now, what do you think of this, and how would you describe it?
So the Nectar d'Or is probably the most polarizing of the range. People either absolutely love it, or they just go, what the fuck?
Yeah, what is this?
Yeah. So for me, I love it. 46% ABV. Dr. Bill's right. It does need a little bit of time to sort of settle. You don't want to pour and drink right away. There's so much going on. Finishing for 2 years in Sauterne wine barriques is ridiculous. There are other companies that are sort of messing around with that right now too, which is cool. But we've been doing it for quite some time now, and so Dr. Bill's kind of got it down pat. And with this, I'm getting like, it's just everything sort of lemon meringue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Frickin' vanilla, like honey dates, but there's still a little bit of spice to it too.
Yeah, it does have that. For me, there's like an incredible amount of nutmeg too. But that's what kind of stuck out first. And just for those that don't know, because it is a little more obscure with barrel finishes, Sauterne, just if you're not totally into wine, it's a French sweet wine from the Sauterne region, Grave, Bordeaux. So late harvest, really sweet wine. So that's what, lending the characteristics to this particular expression. But I dig it. I love when distilleries, especially Scotch distilleries, and they're definitely breaking out of their mold more, because the public's demanding different cask finishes. This line is reminiscent of what the general public is asking for now.
Right.
But I love when distilleries, and particularly master distillers that are rooted in history, aren't afraid to go after it and experiment. He's going to be the first to tell you, any truthful distiller is going to be like, not everything is going to work.
Yeah.
But we're going to try it.
Yep.
So, like you said, you're either going to like it or you're not, but not all whiskey is for everybody.
Right.
So that's why there's this line too. You can pick and choose.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting, man. I like this one. It's not my favorite of the line, and I can see where it would be, polarizing. But I dig it, man.
That's good. Yeah, me too. It's just, and the texture of it too is so much more different than the previous two that we tasted. There's much more sort of buttery sort of mouthfeel to it.
Yeah.
Like coagulated butter.
Sure.
That was hot once and then just kind of been sitting out for about an hour.
Right.
Sitting out at the bottom of a popcorn.
I got you. Now you're more in my lane.
Yeah. Not the one where you cut the hole out at the bottom at the movie theater, but
I don't know about that, man. Come on.
too soon.
Nice segue. Talk about one of your favorite, in your mind, distillery trips that you've taken. Because I know, looking at your Instagram, you've been on some pretty amazing trips. Whether it be early on, I think you went to Peru, I believe. Or,
I did, yeah.
I mean, up until, obviously Scotland, I think last year, right?
Yeah.
So explain, what stuck out in your mind about what's so memorable, and maybe to people listening where they could go to like have a really great time.
Absolutely. I was fortunate enough to go with our boy Stretch Isaiah of Herbs and Rye. We both were co-winners, national winners of a competition sponsored by Encanto Pisco back in 2012.
Sure you were.
And
I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
And that's when I first met like Paul Sanguinetti and Alicia Walton and Julian Cox and stuff like that. Like legitimate bartenders and people that have gone on to run corporate programs or have their own bars now and stuff like that. Super talented bunch, and we got to go and spend, it was like 8-9 days in Peru. We stopped in Lima and then we headed south, and we were there picking the grapes. We saw their little sort of hardcore little bodega down there, if that's the right word, and had to have everything covered because they didn't want anyone to know that they were distilling over there and that they had giant vats of pisco brandy waiting to be blended and stuff like that, and before they took it to a special bottling plant. And that trip stood out to me the most because, one, I'd never been to South America before, and two, the camaraderie of everyone, and three, actually physically doing the work to get everything ready and being a part of the distillation, the harvesting through distillation to bottling process was pretty cool to see, and to be that hands-on. I think that's where my love of grape-based distillate actually started. Because I tell everyone in every one of my trainings that I do, it's like, I am an alcoholic. I drink everything under the sun.
Right.
But, and I love whiskey as much as anything. But at this point, I mean, grappas and piscos and cognacs and armagnacs and Spanish brandies and all that kind of stuff, and American brandies, like I love that stuff too, just as much. And I think that's where my love for that category as a whole started. Scotland was amazing this year. It was my first time there. Got to go with my other guys that have my counterparts throughout the U.S. In other cities. We got to go together and have a full immersion at Glenmorangie and Ardbeg distilleries, and that was amazing. I've been to cognac like 4 times. Hennessy's just, it's so hard to describe.
I was about to say that probably sums it up.
It's elegance and
history.
Just history and a giant bull, like a boar, as they say. Like they just straightforward. They're already looking 100 years forward of what the category should be, sharing all their knowledge and being transparent as possible, and like seeing that from what is generally considered obviously to be a quote unquote big brand,
right? That
those of us that have started out as craft bartenders tended to avoid as much as possible back in the day or even now. Getting people out there to see stuff like that and see how transparent they are from harvest through bottling and everything in between I think is good. Anyone can go see any of our brands. We can set up trips at any given time. We can tell you when they host and whatnot. They can reach out to me. And even if you just want to pop in and say hi to people at Shandong in California and see the winery,
for sure,
or Newton or whatever, like we can do that. It's great because this company as a whole is just really open to sharing all their knowledge and expertise. So,
which is pretty rare and pretty awesome to see in the industry. And one of those moments when you're in Peru, or you're, even most recently in Scotland, do you ever stop and you think, man, bartending got me here?
oh, all the time.
Yeah. And how crazy that is, and how that couldn't have happened 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And how that, I mean, that reflection of, I was making drinks and I kind of stumbled into this, and now I'm, on the shores of, looking at the Ardbeg distillery, and you know what I mean? Like, that has to be humbling and crazy, and it's amazing, like, what this industry, what you can do.
I mean, you know that as well as anyone too. You've done a lot of traveling, especially in this past year. I know. It really is. It's extremely humbling. It's I'd never forget where I came from. I know I was in a really tough spot personally at one point, and then to have this industry embrace me like it had 7-8 years ago, and then to see all my best friends like yourself and I don't really have any friends, but
Saw you reflect, and then you're like, nope.
No, I take that back. No, I'm just kidding.
You know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to call out anybody else's names because I don't want you to run off my coattails, you bastards.
Right.
No, no, I'm just kidding. I think that, I mean, more than anything, it's the camaraderie of the industry. And then if you're good at your craft, if you're studying, if you're putting your best foot forward and trying to represent where you're from and the city that you're currently in working, and you're representing where you work at, good things will happen. There's enough competitions out there. I know people think that, there's a lot of politics involved, and sure there is in some of them, and some of them there's not. You show off your creativity, you give good hospitality, people notice.
Yeah.
Everyone is watching.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, man, if you want to get into this industry, and I know people listening, are for different reasons, whether you're new into whiskey, or you're, enthusiast, or, a total nerd about it, that's great. But there are going to be some people that want to, say, oh, I want to be an ambassador someday. That's one thing is, early on, I was told everywhere you go in this industry, it's a job interview. You just don't, you're always on, whether you like it or not, you're always a representative. And, you are kind of under more of a microscope taking on a brand role, because that doesn't turn off, that goes into, every aspect of your life to a certain degree. You can compartmentalize and whatnot. So it's interesting. That's a good point. You're always on, and it's always a job interview, whether life is, you don't know who's watching.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're constantly under scrutiny. It's true.
Yeah. Which, and I'm sure that takes some adjustment too, to deal with that.
I'm amazed I still have this job, because I curse
Well,
and I'm vulgar in all
knock on wood,
aspects of my life.
This comes out in probably, like, I don't know, 4 weeks. So we'll see. But no, like, going back and kind of what, there's a lot of reasons why I wanted you on the show, and future shows, hopefully, is that what's always stood out is you're a student of the industry and then of the craft. Whether you're behind the bar as a bar manager, you put the same the same effort into learning that craft as best you can. Whether it was when you're an accountant, poker player, bartender, mixologist, bar manager, competition, and now to this. Your current position. That's what's always stood out to me is being a student, and it was an early example too in the industry of, you have to be a student of the craft if you want to progress. What advice do you have for people that really want to progress in really any aspect, but particularly this, with, and even more so, certifications that you've taken, and how that expanded your whiskey knowledge, and maybe which one stood out to you?
Absolutely.
Kind of a loaded question, but
no, for sure. I mean, there's definitely tiers to this answer, I would say. I see some people doing the right thing. It's tough in this town in particular, but I know it could be any market, to make the leap from seeing that cash on a daily basis if you do bartend, and then going on to salary and taking that inevitable pay cut to manage, is a bold move. And it's there's a lot of respect behind that move because you are making an effort as a person when you get into management, saying, I know how we can be more profitable. I know how we can reach our guests' needs better. And I'm going to institute, standard operating procedures as best I can to reach those goals and to motivate the staff and get them. You're essentially putting aside what you want in the short term to get the people working with you.
Right.
At the grassroots level, the servers, the bartenders, the barbacks and whatnot.
It's definitely one
board.
step back for 2 steps forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To motivate them and stuff like that and get to where you want them to be the way you want to be. So I think that's a good step. Certifications wise, I'd say, look, I was very fortunate enough to
Bar 5, right?
to do Bar 5 day this past January. And I was miserable. I was sick as a dog, but I studied my ass off for that. And I did finish top of my class this past year.
Right.
And that is the hardest thing that I've ever done since I've been in this industry. But it was definitely the most rewarding. Essentially, they'll tell you that if anyone ever gets the opportunity to do Bar 5 day, you're essentially telling the entire world that you can walk into any bar. Doesn't matter if it's a world's top 50 bar or a dive bar or a hotel bar, wherever, and be like, I did this. I can walk in and get a job like right away.
Right.
Now, logistically, is that the case? Probably not. But like from a theoretical standpoint, yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
It's so intense, the knowledge that you have to learn. You're learning everything from Baiju, to grappa.
Yeah.
To.
And how many spirits are you tasting a day?
It was like 24 to 42 a day.
Yeah.
Basically.
That's intense.
And it's from, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. basically every day.
Yeah. And it's not even, for those that don't, really understand, Bar 5 is based off of Bar Smarts,
Correct.
Bar Smarts Advanced, and then Bar 5. That's kind of the levels. It's pretty much the pinnacle for bartenders, or beverage industry.
Yeah. There was gentlemen in there that were just aficionados that just loved whiskey and cognac and just wanted to take the class.
Yeah.
So that was really cool to see too.
But what's interesting too about that is, myself wanting to do it in the future and kind of delving into it, it's not enough to say, and Mike Doyle was instrumental in kind of teaching me this too. It's you can blind taste something and say, oh, that's cognac. No, that's not. You have to show your work. It's like being back in high school.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get there from point A to point B? I don't care that you know that it's cognac.
Yeah.
Tell me what wood they're using and what you can pick out and why that particular whiskey has those characteristics.
Yep.
Why does it have the mouthfeel? Why do you think it's this ABV? So that's important to know too. If you're planning on, progressing in, whether it be your palate or you want these certifications, to really break down that whiskey and say, okay, I'm getting hazelnuts or whatever. Why?
Yeah.
And then deconstructing that liquid.
Absolutely.
So I think it's definitely one of the most prestigious certifications. There's a few others on there, but
WSET, that whole wine and spirits,
CSS,
CSS, those are all
spirits specialist.
Yep, those are all valuable certifications. I wish that there was. I know our mutual friend Max Solano was trying to work on something at some point with some of the guys to do a full whiskey certification at some point.
Yeah.
I would love to see that manifest eventually.
Me too.
That'd be amazing because you could essentially do a 5 day just on whiskey, breaking it down by region.
Yep.
And it would be intense as fuck.
Absolutely.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I mean, you can get the tequila certification, you get the CRT. As somebody who appreciates alcoholic beverages in general, like we talked about sherry before and whatnot, if all you wanted to do was just broaden your sense of liquid history and sort of lower ABV libations and whatnot, like doing level 1 quartermaster sommeliers.
Yep.
That was one at least. Cicerone level 1.
Yeah.
Certified beer server.
Yeah, I did.
Beer.
Yeah, sommelier level 1 through the quartermaster somms, and at the time, I did delve into wine, but I'm so glad I did it now because it helps me with what I'm doing now. It helps me with everything. With as odd as it sounds, it helps me with, cooking, and it helps me analyze whatever I happen to be in front of me and break down things in an order. It teaches you structure.
Yes. Absolutely.
to make that trip.
Which you've always lacked, so that's good.
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. Just kind of in that same vein, are there any, people listening, maybe they're like, I don't know where to start. These certifications are crazy. Any like books, particularly on whiskey, that you can kind of think, for me, it's Tasting Whiskey is kind of the
That's a good one.
Yeah.
World Whiskey Atlas.
Yeah.
Anything by Dave Broom.
Dave Broom, yeah.
Yeah. Is huge. Gosh, I just finished one. Now it's the name of the actual book has escaped me, but it was the history of how Glenlivet sort of came to be.
Okay.
God, I can't remember the name of it now.
I'll find it and put up on the Instagram or
that was
show notes.
That'd be great. That learning the history, that story of other houses and how they came about and how they became so huge and the quality of their product and consistency of their product. Mankind's history is linked with booze anyways.
Absolutely.
So from a macro standpoint, you can see that, but from a micro standpoint, you see how society at that point in times, history was linked to the rise of a brand as iconic as that.
Right.
That's always interesting to see, because then you start making associations to, I know Irish whiskey kind of started the first, recorded order of Irish whiskey came in the state, and it was the same date as vodka, 1405. Like, okay, that makes sense now. And like,
puts everything in perspective, and you start
Absolutely.
connecting the puzzle, and then you get this big picture eventually.
Absolutely.
Everything makes sense. Whether it was, and a lot of times we have the fortune now, if you're a craft distiller or whatever, you can order potatoes, you can order this.
Yeah.
But people, maybe don't understand is that these spirits exist and they have that sense of terroir because they used what they had.
Yep.
Most of the time. There were instances where they could seek it out, but that plays a huge part in the history of these spirits is using what's in your backyard. So
Absolutely.
All right, we have 2 more Glenmorangie expressions, so I'm excited.
All right, let's get into the next one, the penultimate Glenmorangie.
This is I've never had this.
Really?
The others I've had, but this is the only one that I haven't tried.
Okay. Well, hopefully you're going to dig it, because this is our global ambassador, David Blackmore, for Glenmorangie and Ardbeg. Great guy. He's now living in Texas now, because he's doing a lot more work in the States. He says this is his deserted isle dram. If he was stuck on a deserted island,
It's that question.
this is the one that he would drink
So good.
all day, all night. So
this is a 15-year ex-bourbon, and then 30% is transferred to Oloroso sherry for the remainder, the 3 years.
Yep.
And then it's blended back in.
And then blended back together.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Wow.
And this particular one is aged in traditional dunnage warehouses. So with that sort of microclimate within them, you're getting a lot more oxidation. Well, I wouldn't say a lot. I take that back. A little bit more oxidation that's going to affect the final product. It's actually going to affect sort of the spirit in a way that's going to sweeten it more than anything.
Okay.
And soften it. So, because that spirit's breathing, that whiskey's breathing through that wood.
Sure. This is absolutely delicious.
Oh, I'm good. I'm glad.
More, like for me, it's like the mouthfeel is definitely a lot different. Rounder, richer. Obviously, it's older, so you're going to have a little bit more complexity.
Yeah.
But more dried fruit it's just really good.
Dr. Bill will tell you, if you ask him about the 18-year, why didn't you just do all first and second fill bourbon cask for the 18? And there is that in this whiskey. But if we were to bottle it as it was, he would tell you it was just a little too tannic, venturing a little bit more towards overwhelming the spirit itself.
Right.
And moving more towards
So they want to soften the whiskey a bit?
the oak and vanilla too much. So that's why they decided to do this. And it took a long time for them to get to this point of thinking 30%, really?
Sure.
30% only aged to 15 and then take that and finish 3 years? Like, that's...
But I think that speaks
trial and error.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks to the brand and, trying to achieve this balance, whether it's just such a key. Cocktails, life, whiskey. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's so cool. You know, you're speaking on, you know, the warehouses, and they're very instrumental in this line. Can you speak a little bit? It's just kind of a side tangent on the Cellar 13. It's 'cause you put out like these special ones where they're aged by the sea. I think it was a special run. But do you know much about it? Or because I didn't know about it. I just know that it was in a warehouse really
Yes.
close.
Right.
So it picked up that.
So that's what a lot of people don't realize is actually that Glenmorangie itself, the distillery itself, is right by the sea. It's right by
So
that
you're getting the
strait.
maritime influence.
Absolutely. So that particular one, we didn't get to visit it when I was there in April, but that Warehouse 13 is where all the, not all of, but a lot of the R&D whiskeys are being held. You're
Oh, nice.
taking into influence, like, you know, a lot of what we've made in the past of our private edition line. Has been sort of born out of the cast that we were messing around with in that particular warehouse.
There's so many expressions too. You have the travel exclusives alone. I think you have like 6. You know.
Yeah.
It's
The
crazy.
Tane, the Duthok, and all those. Yeah,
Yeah.
like those are crazy.
And then the vintages.
Yep.
Like
The Grand Vintage Malt, the
Man.
25 year, the 1990. We've got every year we release a private edition. Like this year, we re-released a star at a slightly lower ABV, which is extremely popular. I think it was our second one that we ever did, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. But you know, we've done Pacult, Milshan, Tusail. Every single time we try and mess around with a different type of strain of barley, finish in a different type of cask. Just they're so creative and they're so crazy.
for how you're treating the barley, which I think in
Yep.
the next spirit we'll get into that. But
Absolutely,
this is absolutely great.
it's good. I'm glad.
I really really dig it.
And it's
definitely getting more.
affordable.
What is the price on this? 18?
You could get.
I mean, I know that's kind of depends on where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, you could get it for about 120, 130 bucks
Wow.
for a bottle.
but Nice.
Compared to other 18 years that are more well known, that are going for 180.
Shall not be
plus.
named.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really good value, I think.
I love for me, a huge, I love it in my whiskey when like figs and dates come out. And this is definitely, you know, just the complexity in this one. It's very cool to see the progression from the 10-year
Right.
here.
You know what's interesting to me is you are noticing sort of those type of flavors, and I'm actually noticing more tropical notes.
Okay.
So I'm getting like a little.
Is it coming from the longer exposure with the American oak?
I think so.
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm getting like mango papaya. More, and that's probably playing a little bit off like coconut notes for me.
Sure.
Which obviously is inherent in American
Yep.
oak cast.
It all
So
kind of links together there.
absolutely. So yeah, it's great. That's the best thing about tasting with everybody.
Yeah.
Regardless of whatever you're tasting, there's some things, it's like a Venn diagram. There's some things that the two of you can sort of agree upon. The rest is like all based on your own personal experience, which is
Yeah.
awesome. So
Absolutely. This was awesome. So we got one more in
Yeah.
the line.
last one.
We'll, I'm gonna do another little clip on this one just because we haven't heard a Scotch accent in a while.
Glenmorangie Signet is without doubt the most unusual whisky ever produced in Scotland. It's a culmination of a lifetime's worth of ideas and dreams. It's a very unusual, very complicated recipe. Some of the parts of the makeup are a secret, but I can explain the key elements of it. At the heart of it, of course, is this stuff, high roast chocolate malt, in which the malted barley grains are tumble roasted in the same way as coffee beans would be. In fact, it actually smells a bit like coffee. So the whiskey from this is the heart of the recipe.
All right. Kind of a little brief.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so different. I'll let you take it over.
Sure. So, I mean, what you're tasting now is the 2016 World Whiskey of the Year. This is Glenmorangie Signet. As Dr. Bill said in that clip right there, we're using high roast chocolate malt. He said we're doing it similar to how they roast coffee beans, but in reality, it's actually used more in making stouts for beer.
Right.
So brewers do this.
It's a great way to relate to this whiskey to a beer geek that comes in.
There you go. Absolutely. And we do pairings. Like we go around town. A lot of the programming that we do at accounts has been sort of Boilermaker / sort of elevated Boilermakers.
Yeah.
Dram and a draft.
That's awesome.
Dram and a brew kind of deal. And this with like an imperial stout or a chocolate stout or a milk stout is just on point.
Perfect.
So
this has some of your oldest stock, over 30 years old. Back when, I read that you're malting your own barley on site and whatnot. So yeah, it's basically, this is non-chilled filtered. Can you explain which ones are chilled filtered and where those fit into the profile? Because this obviously has more flavor. And for those, just because we don't want to gloss over general knowledge, what is chill filtering in a nutshell?
Yeah, absolutely. So chill filtering is you're basically taking the whiskey and removing not all, but a lot of the lipids, the fats, which contain what we call in distillation like congeners. So you're kind of
Flavor.
You're stripping away some of the flavor for a slightly, for lack of a more,
Just think vodka wants none of that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There you go. You're not charcoal filtering everything like a vodka would.
Right.
With chill filtering, you're just trying to soften and I know people hate the word mouthfeel, but it's appropriate here. You're softening the mouthfeel, and it's kind of streamlining the whiskey itself prior to bottling. So when you non-chill filter something, you want everything all there, everything about it. Like that is how you want it tasted. That's how the master distiller wants you to taste it, and that's how you should taste it.
And that's where if you ever get a whiskey where if you put a few drops of water or an ice cube and it gets cloudy, or at the bottom of your bottle, you'll see it. There's nothing wrong with it. It just hasn't been chill filtered, and that's supposed to be like that. No, in most cases.
Great point. So yeah, when it comes to the Signet, this is non-chill filtered. Like Dr. Bill said, at the high roast chocolate malt, we're also using a different type of barley than we do with the rest of our Glenmorangie line. It's a single estate barley that we source ourselves, called Cadbull. It takes a lot more to extract the beer that we need in order to distill that beer.
Is it harder to get those enzymes ready for fermentation and whatnot?
Absolutely.
So it's probably a tighter husk or something?
Yep. To convert that stuff into maltose, those sugars, it takes a lot more effort. So we've got that, and I think what's unique about this too, not only did you mention that we have some of our oldest stocks in this particular blend, but we're also using certain whiskey that we had that was aged only in ex-sherry casks.
Okay.
That we're blending here. What percentage of it? We don't know. That's one of Dr. Bill and Brennan's secrets, but
there has to be some of those.
Absolutely. Yeah. But that's definitely a sort of a unique thing that a lot of people don't know, even if they do know about Signet. So
it's this one's really, really unique. This is what I'm saying about, kind of pushing boundaries. For me, the obvious one would be to say espresso, mocha, right? Mm-hmm. But for me too, on this, like the more I get into it, and on the finish too, is like candied orange, candied. But that orange flavor definitely runs the line of this
Turkish delightish kind of orange.
Yeah. And then I get that mentholy, on this, the mint again.
Right there.
It's really cool. I mean, such a fun, this is why I love doing this, is lining them all up so you can really get a sense of how far you can push expressions based on whether it be 2 years in a cask or the malted barley, or it's just really fun to kind of break these down like this. But this is delicious.
Agreed on all points.
Yeah, some of these I'm not spitting out, so that's just how that goes. Kind of getting back to some questions. What's a? I know it's probably few and far between, but what's a perfect day off for you?
When I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
Because
the busier people get, that's usually the answer. Where they're like, my calendar and my text message and email is, I don't have to look at it.
Like I do answer texts and emails even throughout the weekend. This is supposed to be technically a Monday through Friday job, but in this particular position, in this particular market, more than the other markets, you're essentially on call all the time.
Sure.
So I just love just going to the gym and then just not doing anything the rest of the day.
Yeah. So making the basketball videos.
Absolutely, bro.
If you ever want to get some advice, Nate's also a consultant on jump shots. So, speaking of perfect days off, explain before we get into the Ardbeg and we kind of go a little smoky and heavy. How was meeting 2 Chainz, man? You got to tell that story. You got to, and I watched the video last night.
Yeah,
absolutely hilarious. One part it was great, but just how did that come about? And just so everyone knows that part of it, Nate's portfolio is also Hennessy, so this dealt with that. But I'll let you tell the story a little bit.
I had a feeling you're going to bring this up, actually. So,
how can I not?
Yeah. Hey, man, it's not every day you get to meet 2 Chainz. I get it.
Yeah.
He's a cool ass dude though too.
He seemed pretty awesome.
Talk about a baller. That guy can ball. Like he played D1 basketball and like guy's got skills. Unfortunately, when we did the segment together, he had injured himself, so he was on crutches. But
so
of course his crutch was like
gold-plated.
Gold-plated, diamond encrusted and shit.
I like how in the video he's like, man, people are putting gold in everything just to charge me more.
Yeah.
He's like, my diet is gold.
Yeah, exactly. He shouldn't like gold bricks because like they're throwing gold flakes in everything that he goes and visits. So he had
first world problems.
Yeah, exactly. So on the Viceland channel, in association with GQ magazine, he's been doing for the last couple years actually a show called The Most Expensivest Shit in the World.
Yeah.
So this guy literally goes around 2 Chainz and experiences like sleep deprivation tank that costs like $50,000 to rent or whatever, and he goes and tastes expensive cocktails and the finest wines out there, and flying on the ballerest planes and going through all these experiences, right? And it's just crazy, and he talks about it, and he gives his assessment of these experiences the only way 2 Chainz can.
Sure.
So he happened to be in town again to do another show for Vegas, and my friend that I work with, Jay Hall, on the Moët Hennessey team, was like, he's one of his accounts is the guys that run Chateau, Beer Park, Fizz, and whatnot, and they're like, oh, hey, they're gonna do a segment for the most expensive of shit with the Fizz Deluxe cocktail that has Hennessy Richard in it, which is our oldest blend, the oldest cognac in production worldwide right now. Yeah, it is 40 to 200 years in the blend.
I like his skepticism. 2 Chainz is like, and how do you know who hands that off?
Yeah,
somebody's nephew isn't fucking with shit.
Exactly,
dude. I lost it.
It was fucking awesome. But I finally got to see it for the first time because I didn't want to watch myself. I thought it was gonna be too cringeworthy. But we did it in one take, and they came in to Fizz, and cool ass crew, and the mixologist was there to make the cocktail. And it has, Hennessy Richard cognac in there, 1 ounce, which is like $450 a shot in town for an ounce. And Dom Perignon Rosé vintage champagne, Grand Marnier quintessence and stuff, and some other items. And it was just
lemon juice and some other. But
rose.
My favorite part of the video is you said, you're introducing the products.
Yeah.
You introduced the Richard Hennessy. And you said this has some of the oldest eau de vie, and he goes, ODB.
Yeah. I wanted to. I tried to be as professional as possible. I really wanted to break down and just start saying shimmy shimmy ya at that point.
You should have been like, listen, this cocktail, just like Wu Tang, is for the children.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, trust me, it was a missed opportunity.
I love the editing of the video too. If you're listening, you want to check it out, just type in 2 Chainz most expensive cocktail in YouTube. It'll come right up, and it's funny. The editing of the video is funny, but the eau de vie. He's like ODB. It is the best. I was like, that couldn't have been. So that was a cool like. How was it, kind of behind the scenes? Was he just chill and
super chill, man? The guy's extremely intelligent.
How much was the cocktail, by the way?
$2,500 for the cocktail.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Egg white cocktail. He wasn't too fond of that at first too. That's where I was like, maybe that's a little like, I probably, me personally, not I haven't tasted the cocktail, obviously.
Yeah.
But I probably would have dealt with, left the egg white out.
Yeah. A stirred cocktail.
A stirred cocktail probably would have been my route. But I'm not going to diss it. They're dumping gold on it and all this. Just go watch the video. It's fucking awesome. But I'm sure that's another one of those experiences where you're like, I started bartending.
Yeah.
I was playing poker years, and now I'm giving 2 Chainz a rundown on the oldest cognac on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like I just watch those things. I'm like, God, crazy.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, mind bottling.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I it's true. Like when I played poker, I was a total introvert. Like
Yeah.
didn't have any friends. It was just there to try and make money
Sure.
day in and day out. Or I'd be at my desk with a dozen
How many
screens.
games going on?
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and playing a bunch of them all at the same time. So
Sure.
it's like, I went from having no friends really when I first moved out here for the
Yeah.
first like 4 or 5 years I was here in town to having this whole network of people that I love spending time with, and
Sure.
then I get to this opportunity to do stuff like this with like 2 Chainz. It's like
That's crazy.
It's a crazy journey.
Yeah, how was your transition from being that introvert, not needing to basically complete opposite? If you started bartending, now but the way I've attributed bartending sometimes too is I'm very similar, and I have a small group of friends and kind of to myself most of the time. But when I got behind the bar, that's like you put on that game face,
Yeah.
and it's that was the outlet where
Yeah.
I could be the host and
Yeah.
be not so much the life of the party. That's not my gig behind the bar, but there are some people that do that.
Sure.
I'm more of I want to be accommodating, but you have to be on. Where normally did you find that transition difficult, or you kind of just it helped you kind of open up?
Yeah, I mean, like if you ask any of my family, they'll tell you, "Oh, how the hell did Nate get to be in this position? Because like he's a dick, he hates people."
Or if you ask like certain podcast hosts.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just kidding.
That's very true. Yeah, I mean, it's taken me a long time to foster this reputation that I have, and I embrace it fully. But ultimately, deep down, I think just the way I grew up, it's always been about helping people and accommodating people, and
Sure.
wanting to please people. And the great thing about this industry is, regardless of whether you're behind the bar or not, you get instant gratification. You get instant feedback, whether it's positive or negative,
Right.
all the time, consistently. So if you're somebody who's introspective, you're going to take all that information and find a way to process that and either discard it and don't give two shits about it, or you're going to use it to make yourself better
Right.
at whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're a server or bartender or whatever, brand ambassador, sales rep, anything. So I think that was what was appealing to me about it. And it definitely helped me, like, be in a position where, like, hey, it's actually fun to be
Right.
social with everybody
Yeah.
and not keep to myself and whatnot. So I
Right.
think, I've definitely embraced it. I do love my personal time, but yeah, I mean, I love, like I said before, I love the camaraderie.
Sure.
I probably made way more money playing poker. Well, I know I made way more money playing poker, but I'm like 10,000 times happier
Sure.
now today doing what I do and getting to talk to the likes of you and everybody else and spreading the gospel,
Yeah.
and helping people when they want help, and than I ever was, just 7-10 years ago. So.
Right. That's good to hear. That's, it's important for people to hear too of what the progression was. And, if you're not currently like super, if you don't wake up in the morning, and you're like jazzed about what you do,
Yeah.
there's always that path. Just keep kind of grinding it out. And the way it feels, you've found this like perfect storm of skills for this. You have that studious background to where I can ask you a question about any of these whiskeys and you're going to know it, right? Mm-hmm. Even more than what's available online, or more than what, and then you have that you bartended. So now you can talk on multiple levels to people, or, talk to people in a group. That helps. And then you have the poker background. So now you have the analytical thinking ahead, you know what I mean? So it's like I was saying, in this industry, sometimes you have to have this like perfect mix of skills. So
Yeah, but the best thing about it is that it's different strokes for different folks.
Absolutely.
And you can be yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody's going to notice, and somebody's going to appreciate that, and somebody's going to like you, and somebody's going to give you an opportunity, regardless of whatever that position is. Like we mentioned before, everybody's always watching.
yeah.
And it's that whole. I remember taking a seminar when I went to my very first Tales, before I had even bartended a minute. Back in 2010, I paid for my way to go there. And one of the seminars I took was from Stanislav Vrana, or I always mess up his last name, but he studied in Japan, Russian guy. He's very into Ichigo Ichi, so that's about treating every single guest like it's the first and last opportunity that you get to make a positive impression on them. And his philosophy and the Japanese philosophy of things really resonated with me, and I just kind of taken that to heart every single day, regardless of whether I was bartending or doing what I'm doing now.
Kind of, that followed you into no matter what role.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good life lesson too. So, all right. So that got heavy. That got deep.
I know.
Speaking of that, heavier, smokier.
Good segue.
Let's we're gonna take a little break here and pour some Ardbeg up. And by the magic of show business, we're back. So
Holla.
cool. So now we're into Ardbeg, a little different style. So I'll let you kind of talk on the style of distillery a little bit.
Absolutely.
The rundown.
Appreciate it. So yeah, I mean, Islay is an island off the west coast of Scotland. There's only currently 8 distillers. I believe there's a 9th being built or is going to be built very soon. There's really only like 3,000 plus people that live on this island, and it's almost all regarding agriculture or work with the distilleries for these people. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast when we were talking about Glenmo, from a history perspective, Christianity sort of made its way through Islay before it hit the mainland of the rest of the UK, what we know now as Scotland and England and whatnot. And with that came, when they learned, they brought the knowledge of distillation.
Right.
So the first stills were actually found, in the UK, were found on Islay. So there's a rich history of distillation there for several centuries now. And Ardbeg itself is the most awarded. Well, so let me rephrase that. Ardbeg and Glenmorangie are the 2 most awarded single malt distilleries in Scotland.
Okay.
We have more golds and double golds and more.
I heard Jim Murray likes it too.
Jim Murray's kind of a fan.
Every year.
Almost pretty much every year since like 2008, 2009. He's been a fan.
Right.
We have more World Whiskies of the Year. We have between the 2 distilleries, we have more best in categories. Single malt Scotch of the Year, Highland Single Malt Scotch of the Year, Single Malt Scotch is 12 years. Category, all that kind of stuff. Best Islay malt, all that kind of stuff. It's amazing to me in this day and age when people are, gravitating towards mezcal and stuff like that, that they don't come back to Islay malts
Right.
to taste as well.
Yeah.
Not because they're made in the same fashion, but just because, like, from a macro aspect, you're talking about a little bit of smokiness there, or in Ardbeg's case, a lot of smokiness.
Right.
Since Ardbeg's consistently the most smokiest and peatiest Islay whiskey out there, we average about 10 to 15 more parts per million of phenolic content than everybody else.
I was just gonna have you explain the ppm
yeah.
So you kind of explain that, and just for obviously if you're listening to a whiskey podcast, you're gonna understand peat. But
Yeah.
I mean, can you describe in a whiskey when you taste or smell peat versus smoke and kind of what you're looking for, rather than just because someone listening might be like, oh, I don't like Islay whiskeys, I'm not going to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be the case, and there may be training wheels, and this may not be the perfect whiskey for you, but
Right.
like also tell people how you pick out what key indicators you get from particularly Ardbeg and Islay whiskey with peat.
Those are all great questions, and they're not easy to answer,
No.
actually, to be honest. The best thing about the Islay distilleries that I can say, and I love all of them for what they represent, they all have their own house styles.
Very different, yeah.
And you think, well, how can that be? Every time I taste, a Bowmore versus, or excuse me, not a Bowmore, but a Bruichladdich versus a Caol Ila versus an Ardbeg versus a Lagavulin.
Yeah.
It's like all I get is smoke. It's like, well, then your palate's probably not quite as trained yet.
What's behind that, or what's
Absolutely.
right?
There's so much more going on within those styles, and when it comes to peat itself, it's just inherent to that particular area, that region of the world. It was used as a natural energy source. It's decayed sort of vegetation and there's fields, there's bogs and bogs throughout the island.
So going back to, they were using it out of necessity, not because
Absolutely.
they wanted this style. So it's kind of rounding back to that.
Yep, great. That's perfect. It's very true. And so they can, and up until just, decades ago, that was the main, source of energy for them. So you heat that up and it just keeps on burning, but it also releases that sort of earthy smoke, obviously. And because you're on an island, you get that maritime sea salt influence, and that's sort of what permeates throughout all the Islay whiskeys from all the distilleries out there. And what's interesting about Ardbeg compared to the other ones is once again it comes back to when you have Dr. Bill essentially running both shows for the team. And we have our, distillery head, Mickey Heads, who's obviously got a huge influence in there. And Brendan, who's head of whiskey stocks for us for Glenmorangie and Ardbeg, who created Ardbeg I Know, which I don't have with me today, but is also going to be now officially part of the core line for Ardbeg. And he's working on several projects. He used to run the malting facility for Diageo over at Port Ellen for 8 years.
Is that where the malt still comes from for this?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
So using locally sourced peat with the malting being done on the island,
Right.
Everything's right there. And with Ardbeg, it comes down to the cask selection. We finish in different stuff, ex-bourbon, ex-French oak.
So you're going back to that whole, with the Glenmo line, you're seeing it mirrored different styles, but still that experimental.
Different type of whiskey, different way of making that whiskey, but we're using the same high-end casks.
Those designer casks.
Oloroso,
Right.
all that stuff too.
And it's the same mentality too.
Yep.
Just pushing it in a different realm.
Yep, absolutely. So I think that's the most common misconception about Islay whiskeys is like, don't you get it from the water? It's just smoky water, right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not. It's from the malting process
Sure.
when you're
I
cooking that peat.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a good way to describe it, especially to people just getting into it, is the campfire on the beach, and then the ocean comes and puts out the campfire.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
you get that saltiness with that smokiness.
That's perfect.
What's interesting too, I was reading on driving in Islay, and the farmers putting the peat on the side of the roads to dry. You can just driving down the road and you just see it, because we think of it, peat, it's just in Scotch, and that from like the American side of it, not living there, but it's essential, or up until recently it was essential for a lot of things, heating, not just
not just to make whiskey.
right. It's just funny because we're like, that they just do this to get this style and that's what they're after. No, it was necessity, but
Absolutely.
kind of Ardbeg is pretty cool. It's producing whiskey since 1798, commercial in 1815.
Correct.
Mostly for early on, obviously, production for blended whiskeys up until 97, I believe.
Yeah.
And then it, when it was bought by Glenmorangie.
Yep.
So yeah, it's
It's
large
been mothballed twice.
Yeah, it's such a. The more you read into Scotch history, it's just happened to almost everyone.
Yeah.
Very few were fortunate to never close down. And,
Yeah.
But large production for a distillery with only 2 pot stills. Do they still only run on 2, or was there expansion?
Yep.
That in itself is nuts.
Well, I mean, it's an Islay malt,
Sure.
so the world's palate doesn't quite consume enough to
The
warrant
demand
us.
isn't like, it's not the big blended guys of
Exactly.
the world. Yeah.
We'd love to be able to get to that point, but
Well, the growth has been in this category has been crazy, I'm sure, in the last 10 years.
yeah, Scotch as a whole, especially single, maybe not so much blended, but single malts kind of fell off in favor for a few years there.
Sure.
In the past decade, and now we're seeing another resurgence. Just because, and I think more than anything, we probably have American whiskey and Irish whiskey to thank for that, because then it's now raised awareness to Japanese whiskey, Taiwanese whiskey, Indian whiskey, and then bringing everything back to Scotch too.
Right.
So it's great. Like, the more people drink brown spirits, the better. I mean, I think it's fantastic. So, and you mentioned that the distillery had been active since 1798. to 1815. That was actually, like you said, that wasn't commercial.
Right.
Those were basically pirates
Sure.
that were making their own juice for themselves and whatnot.
Still whiskey,
trading it, yeah.
but yeah, not on a commercial level.
Yeah.
But you know, if
Which a lot, I think, is kind of cool because
absolutely,
that coastline is so craggy and so dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing that they were setting up shop back then,
Right.
with those rickety ass wooden
do you
ships.
feel more badass just going there and just walking around? Like you have to.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
man.
it's high on my list of trips.
I wish I could teleport everyone to that place.
Yeah.
It is overwhelmingly beautiful and haunting
Sure.
and sexy
Right.
and dangerous all at the same time.
Yeah. Because it's turbulent.
Yeah.
I mean, so you think the reason, just coming from a brand point of view, you'd love to teleport people there so they can understand the juice in this glass a little better.
Yeah.
And just for the experience alone, but to truly understand what you're drinking. Like that happened to me going to Kentucky, you know, and seeing like, you know, went to Woodford and behind, you know, there's this awesome waterfall and then you're in it. You're immersed in it, and now all of a sudden you're connected more to the juice in the glass.
Yep.
So I can imagine, and that's the terroir of that place. That's in this glass, and one of the expressions kind of deals with the turbulence.
Absolutely.
But,
I mean, Ardbeg has its own water source, which none of the other distilleries on Islay does.
Okay.
Uigeadail, which is just across the road and up the hill. You can take a short hike to get up there. Obviously, it rains a crap ton over there, so there's always a perpetual amount of. Whereas Glenmorangie has really hard minerality water, minerality focused water, I guess you should say. Uigeadail, where we source our water for Ardbeg, that heads down the slope to the distillery, is actually very soft.
Okay.
So I think more than anything, it's like we talk about with like even Belvedere vodka. The softer the water with Belvedere, it's more neutral. We want the rye to shine through. I think more than anything, the distillate sort of shines through because we have such soft water with the Ardbeg. So, yeah, I mean, the distillery is right on the coastline, and it's had 4 out of the last 8 years World Whiskey of the Year.
Yeah.
So
they're doing all right.
They're doing all right for a place that's been mothballed twice in its history.
Right.
So
the first one, it's interesting because I was just at a blind tasting seminar yesterday for the USPG
with
Mike Doyle, yeah. And this was our last whiskey, and nobody called it. And what I think threw people is, and you can kind of speak to this as well, is the color. And a lot of times, like with Scotch, you know, are you getting there's this idea of, yes, with Scotch, it's not going to have that vibrant color or that golden color. You achieve it, whether it be with barrel finishes and whatnot, but there is caramel coloring, right?
It's allowed.
It's allowed
by law.
And
it's a stylistic choice.
The high-end guys probably aren't doing it, but like this one in particular, you could have dumped a ton of caramel coloring in this, but it's not indicative of the style. And if you saw this in a glass and then the visuals don't match.
Yeah, you would think that this was like Glenkitchy 12, and you think it'd be a light, airy, floral, citrusy
so
kind of
deceiving.
dram, and then you put your nose to it,
and it's this turbulent like rush of aromas. So it's really cool. So all of these, I believe, all the Ardbegs are non-chill filtered, so you can just get that out there, just because they want that full flavor. So this is 46%. The 10 year
for the 10, The 10 is what I wake up every morning to and brush my teeth with.
Yeah.
So this is just amazing.
The Up and Atom.
Yeah.
Whiskey.
Pretty much.
That's awesome. Just splash it on your face in the morning, brush your teeth, you're good to go.
We, at Ardbeg, we use in our marrying vats, our washbacks, they're Oregon pine. So Oregon pine is, for those of you guys who are real whiskey nerds, you might be aware, it's very, if you're not using stainless steel, if you're going to go with wood, Oregon pine is probably the most desirable one to do your marrying vats with, your washbacks with, just because it adds sort of a different texture to the end result. It's more waxy, and
it's a resinous wood too.
It's a resinous wood, and it's more estery in the end. It actually imparts a little bit something towards the final product. So we use that, and then we're also known for our spirit still of having what we call a purifier, and it's in the lin arm. So as the vapors are going up, and considering this is a heavy whiskey, it's a mildly tall still too. It's not Glenmorangie tall, but
Sure.
it's not short and squat, like 10 feet tall. It's
Right.
much taller. As those vapors go up the lin arm, it reaches this purifier. So it almost gives us like another tenth of a distillation, because the heavier vapors sort of fall through that and get a little bit more copper contact, and then it's consistently being redistilled when it falls back down. So it's refining the spirit just a little bit more than you would if you didn't have it.
Sure.
So it's not cheating,
Right.
we're not doing a third distillation or anything like that. It's part
Right.
of the actual spirit still. But that's unique to Ardbeg as well.
That's very interesting. That's kind of maybe speaking to what was to be achieved with this line is that it's not just pounding peat in your face. We still want an elegant whiskey, but with a lot of character. So that kind of speaks to the to the whole.
Absolutely. We talked about earlier, like the style of Islay. Yes, it's smoky and sea salt. There's a lot of salinity to it and whatnot, but every house has its own way. Some want to go straight iodine. Others, we'll tell you this, we love all of them. We'll tell you right off the bat, everyone on the team will say Lagavulin is the Cadillac of Islay whiskeys.
It's not too shabby.
It is freaking beautiful. I
Right.
bathe in it.
But it's different.
Yeah, exactly. And Ardbeg, our style is we want to be creative with the whiskey, and we want depth of flavor. We want layers of flavor.
Sure.
We want you to, what you nose is going to be different than what you taste, and what you taste at the beginning is going to taste really different from the finish. And then when you add a drop of water or whatever on the second one, it's going to be completely different after that.
Right.
So that's Ardbeg style when it comes to Islay malts.
Kind of talk the listeners through, what you're smelling, what you taste, and an obvious one. There's a lot of obvious differences, and that's why this particular episode is awesome. But the finish on these is like in an hour, I'll still be tasting them, which is so fun. But on the nose, kind of what do you get? Kind of
so
beyond those obvious, because a lot of times, a good one for me early on too was brand. This sounds horrible, but sometimes with tasting notes, it gets like that. But brand new Band-Aid, right out of that, that old rubbery kind of. So more so in some other Islas.
Yeah, for sure.
But this does have that element, and that's kind of a key indicator.
Yeah.
But
no, you're absolutely right. When you asked me what's a key indicator of you just explained it right off the bat. Brand new Band-Aid is a great way to do it. Iodine is a great way to explain it. Sort of like a rope that you'd find, heavy rope that you'd find on a ship that's been exposed to the seawater.
that's a good one.
I still.
That's crazy. It's always funny, and to people, the casual listeners too, are gonna be like, "You stupid fucks!" Like grandma's purse and all this bullshit. But
pretentious pricks.
Yeah, but it's our flavors, our memories, right? So if you've ever had that memory of everyone knows that smell of a Band-Aid, but when you said that, I'm like, there's certain things that click, and then it just enhances that whiskey.
I mean, it takes me back to when I was 8, and people didn't realize that my parents didn't realize that they had left me behind, and I was stuck to a yacht for about 3,000 nautical miles.
Is this a true story?
Yeah, and I was literally catching flying fish out of the water and eating it, and I was stuck to this rope, and that's I just kept smelling it, and that's where I fell asleep, and it just takes me back to that.
The amount of bullshit that's going on right now.
How dare you?
So how much of marketing is there in whiskey? So I was with Al Capone. And, no, but
right.
right.
Yeah.
So this is It's just such a pinnacle. 2008 Whiskey of the Year, I believe, Jim Murray.
Yep.
This is where it started to. I mean, is this where the biggest pickup in the line like really started to gain momentum?
Yeah, absolutely, because we were taking stuff that had been distilling, like you said. We became active again in '97, like on full production mode. So 2008 was the first year that we could actually put out something that we felt was relevant and what was up to Ardbeg standards.
Right.
And
so right out the gate,
very first year,
yeah,
like World Whiskey of the Year, like holy crap,
it's not bad,
not too shabby at all.
Yeah.
And as you taste this, like there's the taste belies what you smelled as well, because now I get a lot of baking spice,
Yeah.
And this is first and second fill American oak bourbon barrels only, but the smoke is there, but it's more like Swedish smoked fish and like sort of.
All I heard was Swedish fish.
Not the candies.
Okay.
Not the candies, but
Right.
like.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
I can't relate to that one, Swedish smoked fish, but
We'll ask Raul.
right, okay, right,
And bacon. I get a lot of bacon on Ardbeg 10.
yeah, for sure.
So, black pepper.
Yeah. The bacon's a good one because obviously when you think of bacon, you think of obviously the smoke aspect of
Yeah.
bacon, but the fattiness. So now you're linking it to congeners, the non-chill filter, the mouth feel.
Oily.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a great one to kind of, yeah, man, it's delicious. I love it. I mean, and it was a slow progression for me, just like it should be. But it's weird, like as being behind the bar and seeing 21-year-olds come up on their 21st birthday and give me a Lagavulin, give me an Ardbeg. I'm like, holy shit, where do you go from here?
Damn, that's amazing.
And it's happening. It's a different world. You
Yeah.
know, whether they really like it or they think they should be drinking it,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. They're ordering it,
Yeah.
whether it be a Manhattan old fashioned. But
It's like with people Fernet like 10 years ago.
yeah, it's like
It was challenging to everybody's palates, and that's why they wanted to do it, to prove that they could do it.
exactly. But how many people really, really enjoy it?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's up for debate.
Right.
But cool, man.
Not
This
that there's anything wrong with Fernet, but
absolutely not. But it's an acquired taste. It takes a little bit of time. If you do
Yeah.
end up enjoying it, it's like you're not going to taste Fernet. You're probably not going to taste an Islay Scotch and be like, oh yeah, that's what I was after.
yeah, exactly.
It's really not. I mean, that's just being honest. But, so cool. So we're on to the what are we on? The Uigeadail?
Uigeadail.
Cool.
So this is, now that I know that we just released this pretty amazing too, but Uigeadail in terms of the original core line, the top three, this is my favorite. This is majority of people's favorites because once again we're bringing it back with some sherry influence.
Okay.
So we're taking that that rough and tumble sort of campfire by the ocean action from Ardbeg 10 and bringing it a little more towards the middle with some of that sweet sort of spicy sherry influence now.
Awesome.
So it's ex-bourbon, ex-Oloroso sherry.
This is released in 03, right? Whiskey of the Year in 2009. So
Yep.
I mean,
Again, yeah. Back-to-back winners. It's pretty crazy. This one's higher in proof. This is, I believe, 54.2% ABV.
Yep.
So,
Very different.
right?
Drastically different.
Now you're seeing what the juice is like and then seeing another sort of layers of flavor with this and where this particular smoky peaty malt can go when it's influenced by different types of oak. So
Yeah, I mean, the higher ABV is apparent, but it's not overly hot. You know what I mean? There's this fine line of blowing your palate out and your nasal passages out and just raising the ABV to boost flavor.
Yep.
Right? And this is what this is doing. Because after that initial shock of, oh, we're dealing with something that's a little up there,
yeah.
then it just explodes flavor.
Yeah.
Which is, it's like that flavor transmitter, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. And that's something I'm glad you brought that up because I think if you're on the less professional side of tasting and you're trying to taste spirits and learn how to taste spirits better and whatnot, you'll know that if you're tasting a bad distillate, regardless of the spirit category, if there's heat to it, where is that coming from on your palate? If it's generally when it's not the back of your palate or the back of your throat and it burns, it's probably a poorly made distillate.
Right.
Or a poorly aged distillate, right? If it's a poor distillate and it's been aged for a long time, it's still going to be bad just because it's been in
Can't
oak.
cover up shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's something of note that people should remember. If there's heat throughout your mouth and especially on the middle of your tongue, then you're probably looking at, okay, your eyes are watering perhaps. Like now you're probably talking about proof, like you said. If you're just getting heat and more in the form of a spice, whether it's bell pepper or white pepper, black pepper kind of deal, and it's just on the middle of your tongue again, but just centralized there, then you're probably talking about the influence of the oak. And you're talking about like the baking spices and whatnot.
Right.
Nutmeg, cinnamon, black pepper, all that kind of stuff is sort of coming, and that's from the oak influence. So just 3 little tidbits of info, as a generalization for people that are tasting spirits for the first time or sort of amateurish in that respect. So
Absolutely. Yeah, this one's it's just, I don't know how else to describe it. It's the finish on these are just killer. That's what I really go to Islay for more now.
Yeah.
Is complexity. I didn't fall too much into that. Give me the peat monsters, and you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Like it just wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
So I've always been where the subtleties lie. Where does the complexity lie? And for me, like I just love the finish and how complex the finish is on these whiskeys.
Yeah.
So.
You can, like you said, you can definitely go all the way high ppm and get burnt tire rubber if that's your thing.
And I've had some really great, like, insanely peated whiskeys, but
Sure.
I've also had some just, it's not even enjoyable at that point,
yeah. But
So explain the Ardbeg embassies. Do you know a little bit about that? Because I don't know if we don't have one here, do we?
we do not.
I just thought it was very interesting.
So what I remember from my trip to Scotland is, and believe me, after we finished our immersion trip there, we're like, we need to open up our big embassy in every single one of our markets. Or why isn't there stuff in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Nothing in the U.S. yet. We got to eat and drink at an Ardbeg embassy that was right in Edinburgh, and they're just from what I remember.
That's awesome.
Because keep in mind, all we were doing was drinking whiskey.
You said immersion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're in it.
Exactly. Like that was basically my blood count was just basically peat instead of red blood cells. But yeah, I mean, they're actual physical brick and mortars where you have people that are fully trained on the Ardbeg brand, and it's where like the Ardbeg committee will meet and do tastings and stuff like that, and they're the ones that sort of work on the committee releases. They get interviewed when you sign up to be a committee member online at the Ardbeg website. You can go to these embassies and have an opportunity to determine, like for instance, this year we released Ardbeg Kelpie, and the committee, there's a commercial version that was available to the public in limited quantities, and then there was a version that was slightly different that was called the committee release. And every year we kind of do that with these limited releases that we do year in and year out. And the committee release was named Whiskey of the Year. So it was got 97.2 points at the World Whiskey Awards or whatever. So yeah, like these embassies, we would love to open them up here and find accounts that would be willing to do it. We've talked to the brand team in New York. We've talked to the brand team in Scotland, and it's definitely a possibility here, in the future. But
so it's based on growth of the category and where you see when the demand is
absolutely.
But I just thought it was such an interesting thing that I didn't know too much about, and then it has on the website, find the nearest one. I'm like, oh shit.
We ate at one, and we sat in the room. It was just part of their normal dining room, but everything Ardbeg related, the insignia, pictures of the place, all the POS. Like the Ardbeg team had finished everything out with all the POS.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting in this room having a casual fish and chips, with a pint and pint back with an Ardbeg, whatever it is that you want to drink.
Sure.
And it's just, you're surrounded by Ardbeg's history of the distillery just in an actual like restaurant, pub, tavern setting, and
that's so cool.
And they have everything on the back bar, and
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of speaking on restaurants, for those listening that are maybe, Vegas is kind of a destination, so I'm sure some people will eventually get here. Where in Vegas would you say, there's a couple things.
Yeah.
Where could you get a great cocktail or taste a lot of these whiskeys? Where some of your favorite spots? And then I'll ask you specifics. Steak, pho. We'll just keep it to that.
Okay.
So whiskey selection, a steak, and pho.
Whiskey selection, steak, and a pho. So whiskey selection.
Maybe someone doesn't have these, all these in their town, and they're coming to Vegas and they're like, oh, this is an opportunity to try some of this stuff.
Absolutely. If money's not really an object, the first place that comes off my bat, off the top of my head, and you want to get an amazing meal to it while you're at it, is to go to Sage inside Aria.
That would have been my first.
Like it's
See Aaron.
Well, no, I hate that guy, but just kidding, Aaron. If you're ever gonna listen, yeah, the guys at Sage know their stuff. I mean, even all the way up through corporate,
absolutely,
and whatnot. So Sage is amazing. You said pho and whiskey selection.
Yeah.
And to me, from a more approachable price point and standpoint of being a locals place as well, is District 1 Kitchen and Bar in Chinatown.
100%.
On Jones. Like it's...
Go see Mama.
Go see Mama. Go see Christina and Kai and the whole crew there. Like they've got a great Japanese whiskey selection. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to bring in some Taiwanese stuff too, but they've got, great scotches too, bourbons. They got all the pappies up food there, and fantastic food. And for me,
man.
Yeah, basically like the best pho in town. And I've eaten a lot of pho at a lot of different places, and there's ones I really like, but it's still bar none top for me. So
cool. That kind of covers it. I mean, looking for very different environments, but too, if you're coming to Vegas, man, check them out.
Yeah.
So, was it more fun? This is totally related. To dress up as Elvis in Las Vegas or an elf for Christmas? The pictures exist.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they do.
And they're both great.
Yeah, and with the Elvis outfit, I didn't even stuff that night. So I'm very proud of that outfit. I'm not ashamed of that at all.
It takes a real man to wear a jumpsuit.
A white, basically almost opaque bedazzled jumpsuit,
right?
Where you can see outlines of things like my rippling abs that I don't have, and whatnot. So,
so that's better than the elf.
That was better than the elf because fuck
you're
Pollard,
in Vegas, man. Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. That's
because he loves posting that friggin' picture of all of us
year.
at the USBG Council from that year at Herbs and Rye. So
every year, but yeah, like I don't know, if you're living in Vegas, like you got to try to dress up like Elvis at least once.
Oh, absolutely. And I know I'm apparently have the voice for it. Like my mom says, you got the voice for radio.
Sure.
So I'm very happy to be doing this with you.
Right.
On this podcast, you got the voice for a podcast, but you also have the face for a podcast. So I was like, okay,
wow,
thanks, Mom.
Ho.
Hey, appreciate it.
Be here all day. Yeah, I could pull off Elvis, late Elvis, like very close to when he died, Elvis. Listen, I just love bacon and peanut butter and sandwiches
and bananas. Yeah.
Have you ever been to a Wu Tang concert?
I have. I've actually been to 3.
Okay, what's better, Wu Tang concert or Mayweather Pacquiao?
Wu Tang concert.
Wow, didn't even have to think about it.
No, because Hennessy's involved in a lot of the fights. Yeah. Pacquiao used to be on the Hennessey roster and stuff like that.
Sure.
Before he said all that stuff, and we had to,
some stuff.
Neither here nor there. But, and of course, Floyd he himself personally is a fan of cognac and great base distillate libations. But, yeah, I mean, a Wu-Tang concert, the first one I saw was like years ago, the second reunion concert that they did. After ODB had died,
right?
It was up at Rock the Bells in NorCal.
Nice.
So that was when Black Star was still together, Tribe Called Quest was still together. What are those guys? I forget who else was there, but like Nas was there, and just it was MOP was there, and it was just crazy, bro.
Right.
Like that was huge. They were the headliners, and they rocked it. The next 2 times I saw them at House of Blues once in town, and I forget where else after that, but
It's different.
yeah, I mean, when you're older and you kind of been in the game for as long as they have, it's like they kind of
I'm not going to say how long.
yeah. But it's
That's awesome.
They're kind of chill now.
Well, they're older too, man.
Yeah, exactly.
They're up there with walkers and shit. It happens. Happens to everyone. You want to get into the last one?
Yeah, man. Let's
Cool.
finish this up with the Corryvreckan. I can't roll my R's, but
That's pretty good, man. I didn't want to butcher this one.
yeah. So
You're
Go
going
for
to
it.
tell the story of this one for me. Behind the bar, this was a fun one to kind of give to customers that haven't, they would know Ardbeg by name,
yeah,
but the story behind the name and stuff would help sell it just because it's so fun. But
absolutely. So like Ardbeg's known for the names of their stuff. We talked about Uigeadail. That's the name of their loch where they get their water and stuff, and it means dark and mysterious. Excuse me, in Gaelic. And with Corryvreckan, it's the name of it is a real and active, deep-seated whirlpool off the coast of North Isla. So the reason why we went with this particular name for this particular dram is because it's so deep and dark and foreboding, this particular whirlpool, we wanted our whiskey to match that as well. We want it to be deep with layers of flavor and all that kind of stuff. So this is just a lot going on here. This is brand new Asian, brand new French oak. So Limousin.
yeah, the name is fitting. This is my favorite of the line. Like it, even after I just revisited.
Yeah.
I like this, definitely more aggressive style on the palate, without a doubt. But the name is so fitting. A lot of times you'll see names of whiskeys and it's pretty clever.
Yeah.
But Ardbeg does such a great job at matching the feeling of the whiskey with the name. So this is 2010 World Whiskey of the Year, the World Whiskey Awards, 71%, I believe, right?
No, this is 50,
57.
57
Sorry.
point. Yeah.
Not dyslexic, but
No, you're good.
Yeah, 71.
Yeah. So higher than Uigeadail.
Which is
57.1. Yeah, this is intense. And I mentioned it at the beginning a little bit when we were talking about different types of wood, American oak and what you get off French oak. With French oak, it's a tighter grain. You get a lot more sort of pepper and spice.
this one's so much
Off this?
warmer.
It's
Just-
very warming. Absolutely.
It's like a crazy, turbulent, warm hug. I don't know.
Uncle. No, not again.
Not that.
Oh,
You know
okay,
what I mean.
okay.
That's
yeah,
the best way
yeah.
I can describe
Yeah,
it.
I mean, that's the first thing that came
Or
to
the
mind.
worst way I can describe it.
Like when I was on that yacht when I was 8, and it's like, Uncle, no.
Oh, memories. Anyway.
Just kidding. That didn't happen. Or did it?
Dun, dun, dun.
But yeah, like this for me, I mean, but there's some heat to it in the form of like, this is like, not bell pepper, but like some sort of chili pepper.
Yeah, it has that greenness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Not as hot as like Thai chili.
No,
but
no.
Like cayenne maybe?
I could see that. But it has that, man, the finish though. But it's just such a roller coaster. This one
Yeah. I mean,
of flavor, like it does go through that like greenness, that spicy, that peppery. But then you get these fruits and dried fruit and like, I don't know. It's just one of the most interesting, especially whiskeys in general, but especially for this category, the Isla, this style is just so complex. Definitely my favorite. I mean, I dig the line for sure, but this one it's more suited to my tastes and what I look for in a really good whiskey.
that's cool.
I love it.
Awesome, man.
So yeah, man, thank you so much for coming by.
My pleasure.
Gonna do some shout outs. I know you're enjoying how's being an uncle.
Being an uncle is amazing.
Yeah.
My nephew's fantastic. He's walking all over the place now.
Yeah.
He's like a year and a month old. He's a riot.
Spoiling them?
No.
No?
You know,
Good.
Like,
Keep them humble.
yeah, absolutely. You know, I lock him outside when I have to watch him. You know,
Good.
gonna-
Let them figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You sit Indian style until I notice you,
Yeah.
and then maybe you'll get dinner.
Right. Only the strong survive.
Exactly. I mean, this is
Yeah.
300, bro.
Right.
You know.
I'm kind of far away from my nieces and nephews, but I always loved it because, like, you know, earlier on you could play with them, watch them, and then when it got too much, you're like, nope.
Absolutely.
Just then you lock them out.
Yeah, I haven't changed a diaper
Yeah.
at all. So.
What's his favorite whiskey? It's a trick question.
We're just trying to get him into it because he's really into Hennessey VSOP more than anything. So we're
Well, the expensive taste right off the bat. It's gonna be after that 2 Chainz cocktail.
yeah, exactly.
All right, man. Thank you again to
Thank you.
Nathan Greene, you know, coming by and you know, putting the whole 2 very different expressions and lines, but really, really unique and cool. So I urge you guys to check them out. If you come to Vegas or your local bar, demand them, man. Taste them. So thank you again, and I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you all so much for joining us for the Whiskey Talkin' podcast. If you dig the show, please share it with your friends and family that might also enjoy it. Follow the show on Facebook, Whiskey Talkin' Podcast, also on Instagram and Twitter under the name Whiskey Talkin' PC. The website's whiskeytalk.in. Feel free to contact me with thoughts, show ideas, whiskey suggestions, or anything your whiskey heart desires. Thank you again, and remember,
If it got out of hand, it was the whiskey talking.